It's receiver week. And we might maybe talk about who might be throwing them the ball to. Let's see what happens. And ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, the fake news media does not want you to see me in the background. So I clicked the wrong thing because, of course, I did. This is why I have a producer, Kyle, to do these things. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the show. This is the Gold Zone, brought to you by Game On Wisconsin. I'm your host. I'm Jacob Westendorf. I'm joined by Jacob Morley, as I always am. Morley, it is been a quiet week, right? Nothing really going on as far as anything, right?
Nothing at all going on in 1265 Lombardi, which is actually true. Nothing is really going on in 1265 Lombardi. Most of the commotion and action is going on in Southern California and New Jersey, oddly enough, which I do have to say it was quite alarming to see how many Packers fans don't realize that Aaron Rodgers does not live in Green Bay year round. Why are they flying to California?
Yeah.
Well, that's where he's at.
Yeah, people have houses, guys. That's how this works. Like that, and that's fine. Here we go. We've got the Rodgers jerseys are not on sale, but Favre jerseys are, which you might think that's nothing, but I do know that like Derek Carr jerseys were on clearance before that move was officially announced. Oddly enough, so were Darren Waller jerseys, but he hasn't been moved or cut or anything yet. So we'll see if there's anything on that front. But yeah, an interesting week thus far as we record here at 7:00. So if you see us kind of not focused, we're trying to see if we've got breaking news or anything like that throughout the course of the game. So I think that, we got a lot of stuff that's going on. I don't know. There's a lot, like I keep saying, there's a lot. It's the Packers and it's Aaron Rodgers, and it's weird. And, when that news finally drops, Morley, you said it before the show, it's going to be different for sure. Like I remember when I was younger and they traded Favre, and I still remember like double taking at the screen when they said Rodgers and the Packers for the first time. And I was just like, hadn't been that way my entire life. Like, it hasn't been that way for a long time here. Let's do this real quick, I guess, since we're on the topic at the jump, and we will talk mostly receivers because there is no trade to talk about. But this is the news. The Jets had their contingent with a loaded cast of people coming through on that. So they fly out to California, and they're talking to Aaron Rodgers. Couple things for me. I did tweet yesterday an analogy that people really enjoyed. I said, you cannot unbang the housekeeper, which is a Ron White joke for those of you not familiar with his stand-up comedy. But basically, I can't picture like the Packers saying, yeah, go talk to him, but we want you back. Like, you don't want to go there? Okay, that's fine. We want you back. Like, I know that's been leaked, but there's not a chance in hell the Packers would have done this the last 2 years when they were actively begging Aaron Rodgers to come back to the team. I can't picture that. Number two, and this is more important, I think the compensation part is getting funny to me. The Jets are not, and whatever team, are not getting Aaron Rodgers for a third-round pick and a conditional fourth or whatever's been like. There's no way. I don't think there's any. I mean, I will believe that Aaron Rodgers is not being traded for a first-round pick when I see that happen. Maybe it's not going to be 2 or 3 and all that good. Maybe it won't. But it's organizational malpractice, because the latest nugget from Garofalo was something like the Packers aren't asking for an offer they can't refuse. They just want to get as fair compensation as they can and move on. Number one, if that's true, and I don't think that is, but if that's true, then like Gutekunst, what the hell are you doing, man? Like maybe you would settle for what you think is fair compensation, but like if Woody Johnson comes to you and says, "Hey, we'll give you our next 3 first-round picks and Quinnen Williams and Sauce Gardner," and you're just gonna be like, "No, no, 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 no. We just want to move on. We just want to make sure that we move on. Let's get some fair compensation and move on." Like, no. If they want to take a bath, then feel free. Now, I don't think that's going to happen, but like I said, I've been using the template of 2 picks and a player. Maybe that means a conditional pick. Maybe that means a straight pick. Maybe that's 2 firsts and a player. Maybe it's 1 first and a third and a play. I don't know what it all comes down to. That's been what's in my head since this whole thing started. And I think that makes sense. Like Matthew Stafford, he got a first-round pick. And I know they took an extra one to take Jared Goff's contract, whatever. Multiple day 2 picks. I don't care how old he is. I don't care about the contract. I don't care about any of that stuff. And I don't think the Jets do either. That's a negotiating ploy. That's all. So at the end of the day, pick 13, Jermaine Johnson, and what did Ross Uglum, our buddy, said, a second-round pick that's conditional that becomes a 4th or 5th if he doesn't play. I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
Yeah, not the haul that you would have gotten a season ago. But Jermaine Johnson adds to your edge room. You got pick 13 to do whatever. I don't think anything. What do you make of this entire thing?
Yeah, I think the compensation part of it is getting kind of wonky just because of some of the, there's so many reports floating around, and like I get they're not going to hold on to him, and I think the cat is out of the bag. I think New York.
I was going to say, is there any scenario you can see now?
No,
where he comes back.
I don't think he's back. That would be the most shocking thing, is if he's back in Green Bay, and I think the Jets know that, and I think the Packers have done a good job of trying to keep that kind of close to their vest. Of that, like, hey, yeah, we'll take them back, but I think the Jets aren't stupid. They're like, I think the Jets are at least at a point where they'd be willing to call that bluff. You'd be like, okay, fine. It's Jermaine Johnson in a first. Oh, we want him back. Okay. Bye. Offers on the table. I think that's kind of where the point they're at right now. And I think the offer you couldn't refuse is more so referencing like last year, if they were going to move him, if something would have come up and a team just would have absolutely come in and blown them out of the water. Like, I think that's where that's coming from. And I think fair compensation for him is still a first-round pick and stuff, and it might be a high pick next year. It might be it might be 2 first, first this year, or first next year. That's conditional, depending on whether he plays or not, and a player. The Packers could very much be like, that's fair compensation for him. He's a 4-time MVP quarterback. You want him, you're going to have to come with that. And I think that's more so where it's at, but we don't know. And we won't know until the details are out. And I cannot wait for it to be over. And just so we know that, hey, this is what they got. This is what they're getting, and all that. I know, the 2 biggest shocks to me would be 1, Aaron Rodgers being back, and 2, that trade not involving pick 13. I think pick 13 in this year's draft class absolutely has to be probably the biggest bargaining chip for the Jets outside of a player. They're not getting Sauce. They're just straight up not going to give you a draft pick in Sauce Gardner. I would probably trade Aaron Rodgers straight up for Sauce Gardner if they wanted to go down that route. I would very much consider that, but
the Jets probably wouldn't do that.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know if they would or not, but I think
it would take a minute for them to get to that. Like they'll say, like, well, what about pick 13? What about this? What about 13 and this before it got to Sauce?
And I think that's part of it too. Is like, if it's a young player, it's someone that the Packers like, someone they think has a lot of potential that maybe hasn't realized that potential yet. Like Sauce is realized that potential, right? He is already a key piece. Like someone like Jermaine Johnson is the person that we're going to keep throwing around. We know that the Packers liked him in the draft class last year. We know that he hits all their athletic thresholds that they like at that edge rushing position. It just makes a ton of sense. And he's not necessarily part of their core yet. He could be. He was fine as a rookie, So I think the Packers are just really looking at him like, hey, we liked him coming out last year. We're just going to view that as another first round pick. Because if we get pick 13 and Jermaine Johnson, that we're basically just going back in time and they're giving us our first round, their first rounder from last year, someone that we would have liked to take in the first round last year as well. So, in a sense, that is still a first round pick. So that would be like, hey, here are your two first. So that makes sense to me. The other thing that I'll just say that I'm waiting for, because I just feel like there's one more really weird thing that has to happen. We're not done yet. We're not done yet. And I just have a feeling, just knowing how Aaron Rodgers is, I think there's another team that's going to get involved. And I think they're going to do this game with someone else, which would be great for Green Bay. It would.
Yeah, exactly. I hope that's what happens, honestly.
And here's the other thing I want to talk about. And we can move on to the fun stuff today. But someone brought up the point, and I don't remember what I was listening. I think it was like Daniel Jeremiah and Bucky Brooks talking about how, well, Aaron Rodgers is going to want his new team to have all this draft capital. Why would he go over there and be like, well, don't trade a lot for me because we want that to build? Like, have you paid attention to this guy? Aaron Rodgers is going to want it to look like they gave up a haul to get him because he's Aaron effing Rodgers.
And he
that's how
doesn't
he
care about
operates.
those rookies. Like, he's
He
going to
doesn't.
say, hey, I'm here for a year or two or
And
three.
he wants the optics to look like I'm
the
so
dude,
damn
yeah.
good that they gave up 2 first-round picks for me because I am that dude. Like, that's what he wants. And I don't. I say that probably too confidently. I don't know the guy, but I've followed him for 17, 18 years in Green Bay. I think a lot of us, without knowing the guy personally, we do know how he operates and we do know what he likes to do. So, what did Ben just say? Thanks for watching.
Because you said
First?
MFing instead of what
Oh,
MFing really
yeah.
is.
You're welcome. You're welcome, buddy. But yeah, dude, let's talk about wide receivers. There was actually a fun little nugget that was dropped today by our dear pal Justice Mosqueda at the Acme Packing Company.
Yeah, I will get there in just 1 minute. I did want to ask you one question because I do want to bring up this point on the pod. It's a popular name of a player. 2 things on that, actually. Bill Huber wrote for Sports Illustrated. He asked a couple executives, essentially, what would you offer and accept for Aaron Rodgers? And they both essentially came to like a first-round pick and a young player on a rookie contract, or like a first and a fourth or something like that, which if I'm Gutekunst, I prefer the player. The 4th-round pick I'm not Brian Gutekunst, but it doesn't move the needle for me, even though the Packers draft like really good players in the 4th round. So maybe it should, but give me the young guy. I would prefer that. He's already been in the NFL. And plus you're not acquiring the player on a rookie contract that you don't have a feeling is pretty good, which brings me to my next point. Is a popular name tossed in these trades is Elijah Moore. And I started looking at some numbers, and these are just bare bones statistics. I understand that, but Elijah Moore's stat line from last year is essentially identical to Randall Cobb's. Now, Elijah Moore is a second-year player. Randall Cobb's an aging player. You can look at that one of 2 ways. Me personally, I don't have a ton of interest in any of the Jets receivers. They're not trading Garrett Wilson, but I don't have any interest in trading for Corey Davis. I don't have interest in trading for Elijah Moore. Corey Davis, like if you want him, make the Jets cut him, because he's a cut candidate anyway. So make him cut him. Don't waste compensation on that. And Elijah Moore, it's just like he's already 2 years in. He's already had a issue where the team basically quietly suspended him without actually suspending him.
Didn't he call Matt's brother like an idiot?
I think it was a little bit harsher than that, but yeah,
but I mean, like, that'd be a
help.
weird dynamic.
Yeah, that doesn't help. And now, not just all of those things, you only have him for 2 years. Like, I think they can draft a guy that can do the same sort of stuff that Elijah Moore can. And now you have him for 4 years guaranteed, maybe 5 if you take him in the first round, but 4 or 5 years instead of 2. Like, do you have any interest in either one of those guys? Because I feel like a lot of the I want Elijah Moore analysis is based in I liked him before the draft, and I probably haven't watched him play since.
I mean, the Packers liked him too. So that I think that's where some of that comes from. But for me, it's just I don't think I don't think New York would want to move any of their offensive pieces if you're bringing in Rodgers. I think they'd be more willing to part with, and that's why Jermaine Johnson makes the most sense to me, is because he's not a key defender. He's still got 4 years left on his rookie deal. He's cheap. He's got potential. He's at a premium position, and he plays the position the way the Packers love it to be played. So I think if there's a young player involved, that's who it is. I don't think it's Elijah Moore. I would have a hard time seeing that. Like if they threw him in there, like a first, a fourth, and Elijah Moore, like okay, I'd be fine with it. But I just don't see it happening.
Yeah, and like again, I'm not going to be like actively pissed. I just would want to know like, if they say, hey, we'll give you Jordan Whitehead or we'll give you Elijah Moore along with these 2 picks, then I'm going to say Jordan Whitehead. Like, there's not a lot of players that the Jets are going to theoretically offer, and for me to say, yeah, I want Elijah Moore, like draft a receiver, and we can talk about that now. You mentioned a nugget from Justice Mosqueda, he of Acme Packing Company. He sent out a mock draft today, and Aaron Rodgers trade was included in it. Pick 13 was included in it. The 13th overall pick, which made me like raise my eyebrows a little bit, was Jalen Hyatt, the wide receiver from Tennessee, and Morley's draft crush. Well, one of several, I'm sure, but at the receiver position specifically. Spoke with our friend Peter Bukowski at the Super Bowl, was asked what it would be like to play for the Packers, which was pretty cool. If you want to go back and check that out, you can do that at Locked On Packers. But the conversation in there was that the Packers view Jalen Hyatt in the same light as Chris Olave, which Morley, we know, and it's been we knew that before, but it's been subsequently reported by several people. The Packers loved Chris Olave. Aaron Rodgers, very specifically too, loved Chris Olave. Not that matters that much now because he's on his way out the door. But Chris Olave, if he had fallen to pick 13, 14, somewhere like that, I think Green Bay would have gone up and gotten him. The Saints jumped that, gave up 3 top 120 picks or something to go get him. But in the same realm as Chris Olave, it's interesting because, Morley, you're better at this than I am, but you have the thresholds, the things the Packers typically care about at receiver, and Jalen Hyatt is small. But he's
not fast. Heavy. He's not heavy.
No, he is really fast though. So tell me about Jalen Hyatt and what he could add to this offense.
Right. I mean, you look at him and he's not short. He's 6 feet tall. You know, he hits that threshold. He is 190 is the weight, and he's like 176. So like when he weighed in at 176, I was honestly kind of like, I was hoping he'd be like in the 180s just so like you could fudge it a little bit more, be like, well, it's close. He's not even close. So that would be like a huge outlier for them to reach outside of their comfort zone and take someone like that. But, that's something, what we know about this Packers team and what they've liked at the wide receiver position. They've liked some guys that we would look back on and be like, oh, he didn't check that box. And so I think maybe, it's a good way to kind of guide what they like and all that stuff. But they, Brian has shown that he will go outside of his norms and take a guy just because he loves him. And that's good. I think that's a good process. But Hyatt is just, you hear the phrase easy speed thrown around on some of these guys. And that's Jalen Hyatt to a T. I've never seen anyone do what he did to Alabama and Georgia. Riddle, just 5-star defensive backs all over the field, and nobody could cover him. And the thing about
Hyatt, there's 2 safeties that are going to be drafted in the top 100. Well, a safety and a slot corner that are probably going to be drafted in the top 100. It's Nick Saban. Like, that's the part.
Same with Georgia. Georgia's got a safety and a corner that'll probably go in the top 100 as well. Yes. And the thing about Hyatt is he's really fast. Like, obviously he's really fast. He's a high cut guy. And I saw someone, and right away I thought, did Goody say this? Because someone, the Starbucks guy, said that some GM told him that he
Morley just got blocked.
I don't know what his name is. I just know that's his
coffee boy.
Yeah. But he said he talked to a GM and he said, hey, I think, Jalen Hyatt reminds me of Chris Olave. And that's weird to me. And I was like, man, did Goody say that? I don't know if Goody said that because they're not the same type of player. But then I went back and read the article and said they view him in the same regard as Chris Olave, which makes more sense. It doesn't mean they're the same type of
And
player.
he was their
But
number one receiver. So that then makes me wonder, like, I mean,
these are,
we always,
I think
there's always
that's what they're saying is like,
yeah,
that's their number one guy.
which
And
is
that's
interesting
not
because there's
shocking.
always a consensus. Like the consensus always
Yeah.
builds of like, well, this guy is wide receiver, like, Quentin Johnston, Jackson Smith and Jigba, name your guy. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
This is
I
the
think
number one guy.
this group's weird though, because I think it could be any of those 5 guys. I think there's 5 guys that most people have like in their top 5, and it's just some type of different order. Like for me, Jalen Hyatt is number 2 on the list. He's my second highest receiver, just overall grade. And we talk about the speed, all that stuff. But one thing that Jalen Hyatt is really good at that I think a lot of people don't understand is he is a dog with the ball in the air. Like he has very good ball skills. Like he is the type of guy that will go get the football, and he
That's
is not
something
someone
that the
that's
Packers tend to care about too. Not every single one of them, because I know that one of the criticisms I personally have about this time of year is number one, we speak in absolutes, and number two, they'll never do that, or he'll never, whatever.
Yeah.
But the Packers have typically valued that. Like Devontae was a go get the ball guy. Jalen Hyatt's that way, certainly. Christian Watson, not quite, but Romeo
Not
Dobbs
quite,
was
but
way.
more than what we thought he was. You know,
Yes.
like with the contested stuff, like he showed some of that, and Hyatt is that kind of guy too. And I think when you're talking about an actual, a vertical threat, you want that. He is not like Ted Ginn, I think, is like his floor. People talk about that. But even so, like Ginn was kind of like, let me run fast and you better throw that thing into my breadbasket. I'll catch it and run.
And
Hyatt is not that way.
In the NFL for 15 years, or like he had a really long career.
Very good career. I think he's Hyatt reminds me more of Deshaun Jackson, truthfully. And another guy that was in the league forever and ever. And just his ability with the ball in his hands. And I think he can be a really good route runner too. It goes back to the same thing with Christian last year. Can't and haven't been asked to do it are very different things. And you look at Josh Heupel's offense at Tennessee. One, it's scary because they don't run an NFL offense. They don't.
It's
and like
Baylor's
if you want,
offense.
and if you want to come to me and be like, hey, he's gonna have a huge learning curve in the NFL, I'll say, yeah, I think
so did
you're
Christian
probably right.
Watson. So
yep. And so, but it is player to player, and that is it's the helmet scouting stuff. So I don't think that necessarily scares me. And what is exciting with him and what's exciting with this team right now is any receiver we're going to talk about today, you have to talk about it looking through the lens of how does he fit with Christian. And for me, it's like, okay, go take Hyatt, go take Watson. You have 2 of the fastest guys on the field at all times, and it's not fun to defend that. And I don't know if the plan is just to say, hey, we want to do the Miami thing with just the really fast dudes, except bigger ones. But if it is, that's kind of a fun plan, and I'm here for it. The Score 100 agenda will be pumped, at full blast if that's what they do with Jalen Hyatt in the top 15. And the other thing it's too is like Jalen Hyatt's range in the draft right now is wild to me because it wouldn't shock me at all to see him go top 15. It wouldn't shock me at all if he's there at 45. I don't really know. I think he came out, and this is a weird thing that I'm about to say, but I think he disappointed people by running a 4.4 flat. I think a lot of people thought he was going to run in the low 4.3s, and he just didn't. I don't think that matters. I think you saw that he's fast. I think you see it on tape. But still, you want to see, people were talking about him breaking the record at the combine. He just ran,
fast,
a really fast
normal
time.
fast.
Yeah, just a normal fast time. But you turn on the tape, man, and he is a dog. So he's exciting. He's a lot of fun, and we'll see. I can't wait.
Yeah, the other thing about it is the NFL has a 100% injury rate, and one thing the Packers have done quite a bit, not just at receiver, but quite a bit over the last couple of years, is like, well, we got these guys and we're good. It's like, well, on the offense, they've had the one fast guy for the last couple of years, and you saw it 2021, receiver that goes by his initials that was on the team in 2021 doesn't play. And now the entire offense is vastly different because they don't have anybody that can take the top off of a defense. If you get a guy like that, and I'm not saying it has to be Jalen Hyatt, I'm not even saying it has to be a first-round pick. You get a guy who can take the top off of a defense or at least has that threat to where the safety has to give him a second look or something like that, it can make things a lot easier for, the guys. Like, here's the thing. True North Packers fan, they should prioritize tight end. I don't necessarily agree with that. I do think that they need more talent in that room. I just don't know. I guess I would have to ask back, what does prioritize mean? Because does that mean they pick one at 13? Because I don't think I agree with that. But at any rate, adding 2 fast guys helps your tight end stretching the seam, playing underneath, stuff like that. It opens things up for them, and it opens things up for the theoretical slot receiver. You know, I've said before, if the Packers were to add a veteran that can go deep to go with Christian Watson, draft a receiver that plays in the slot, or maybe that's Romeo Doubs, and upgrade at tight end, whether that's, you know, value signing like Mike Gesicki or a draft pick like Michael Mayer, Dalton Kincaid, you know, whatever. You have a lot more room now to operate with those guys. So I definitely think that that is something that Jalen Hyatt brings that is valuable. That the other guys really, I mean, Jordan Addison tested poorly, not a great athlete from a combine standpoint. Now, good player, Biletnikoff winner, but it just, I can't picture the Packers giving him a second look on the first day of the draft, especially maybe at all. Quentin Johnston, there's some questions about him. He's kind of
I got a quote about Quentin Johnston that I heard from someone smarter than us that may or may not work for a team. It was something like this: we love Quentin Johnston's ability with the ball in his hands. We're concerned with how we get it there. Yeah. And I think teams are lower on him than most people on draft Twitter are.
Yeah. So, and it's interesting. I was kind of talking about this earlier, how we get this consensus. You know, I remember years ago, the consensus was like the edges are Bosa, and then like Rashawn Gary, it's like a bucket of Rashawn Gary, Montez Sweat, Brian Burns, Cleveland Farrell. And like, I think we forget sometimes that teams have their own boards. So for example, Cleveland Farrell was the first not Bosa edge taken in that draft because the Raiders liked him more than the other guys. Now they were wrong, but that does happen. You know, I think we get into this like mode of like, oh my God, how are they going to take that? Like the other day I was doing a mock and I said I would take Sam Laporta at pick 45, for example. And somebody's like, well, I keep seeing him available at like 80. It's like, well, that doesn't mean anything. Like that. Okay. Actually, it means less than that. Like, so cool. I mean, for the sake of the simulation, that's the most realistic we can get. Because if I do a simulation without the simulator, then I can pick Bryce Young and Will Anderson and Jalen Carter with my first 3 picks if I really wanted to. I can just rig the picks to work that way, but it doesn't work that way. So all I'm saying that is, don't be surprised if Green Bay does have Jalen Hyatt as their number 1 receiver, or, you know, something against the norm, the consensus, the everything like that. Like the NFL teams, they're smarter than we are. They see a lot more. They know a lot more. They know what to look for. It's not as simple as, you know, X, Y, and Z. And I'll have some stuff next week.
Well, and I'll say last thing about Hyatt. I think when you cover this thing and you watch this draft and you watch the combine and stuff, and you kind of look at your Twitter feed, and when certain guys are about to work out or about to do things or have done things, and there are certain people like amongst that are maybe more connected in the NFL than most of us are, and they're saying stuff like, this guy's going to go higher than we thought. This guy's going to go higher than you think. The NFL likes this kid. Believe them. Believe them. They talk to those guys. They are in tune with that. And Hyatt is that type of guy. I've been mocking him to the Packers at 15 for like a month, and people just give me crap about it. Like, they can get him in the 3rd round. PFF has him at 90. Like, I'm not going off their board. I'm not going off their board. I'm going off mine, and I'm going off of what I hear and what I know.
My board looks different from your board, and our board looks different from Brian Gutekunst's board. So let's get into the other guys. The other thing I want to talk about too with this team is remove and I know I'm asking for a lot, but the score 100 agenda, take that bias and put it away for just a minute. I will not. But what I'm asking you is, does this receiving core have enough? Is there something that you think they need to add? Do you think, because my take on this receiving core is Romeo Doubs is probably a wide receiver 3 on a really good offense. Christian Watson could be a wide receiver 1. I am not personally ready to just stamp him as that right now. And that's not a knock. He had a wonderful stretch. He made the season so much more fun. Because before his emergence, this offense was boring as hell, hard to watch. Just it was really a lot to move the ball before Watson emerged. That being said, did have some struggles, missed some time with some injuries, and he hasn't been asked to be the guy yet. And sometimes that takes a minute. So I am excited to see them build the offense around him for an offseason, which I do imagine is what they will do. But I do think that this team needs more guys. There aren't enough. Even Dobbs is like a possession receiver type player. They don't have the guy who can catch the ball and take it the distance. Andy Herman was talking about this on Pack-A-Day a couple days ago. For somebody to catch the ball from their 20, from the opposing team's 20, and just take it to the other 20, take it to the house. And Green Bay doesn't have enough guys like that. So I do think regardless, I keep saying regardless of who the quarterback is, but the quarterback is Jordan Love. But I did think regardless of who the quarterback is, they need to add guys. And I think that is true regardless. And that is something that, I've talked about quite a bit, is Green Bay being a little too faithful in like their own guys, or thinking like, oh, we got this guy, he's good enough. Romeo Dobbs is wide receiver 2. That's good enough. But it isn't. Like it just isn't going to be. He's not fast enough. He's not able to separate and take the ball the distance. He doesn't make a ton of plays like after the ball is in his hands. He's just kind of a solid possession receiver, which is valuable. Those things have value. That's why Alan Lazard has value. That's kind of what he is. Not quite the same players, but sort of, you know what I mean? But my question to you is, Morley, it's not the worst receiver room in the league, like some people might have you believe, because they haven't, because I say this with apologies and regrets sent to Greg Jennings, Devontae Adams, Randall Cobb, Jordy Nelson, James Jones, etc. But receivers can only be good if you take them in the first round, is what I've learned over the last 3 or 4 years when it comes to doing stuff in the draft. But what I say is this receiving core, what else do they need to do to build it? Or do you think that they're okay? Like Samori Toure, to me, I don't even consider him. Same with Bo Melton. Those aren't guys that you don't add to the room because you're like, oh, we got those guys. And Green Bay, I think, has done that too often at a lot of positions, not just receiver. But what's your take there?
Yeah, I think, I don't think they're done. And I think that's why we still mock receivers to them so early. And I do appreciate that it seems like they are just trying to add guys. They're just trying to add dogs on offense. And I think that there's nothing they couldn't add. I mean, I think you laid it out perfectly. Like Christian Watson is all you really have, and you're excited about him, but he's all you're really probably counting on. And if all you're able to count on is one guy that you hope takes a year or two jump, that plan's as bad as it was last year, with these guys hoping they are good as rookies. So what they need, what they could add is obviously a veteran. It would be great. And then if Jordan Love, when Jordan Love's the quarterback of this team next year, I think someone in the middle of the field that is going to be a reliable target would be a very valuable asset. I think a tight end might be nice, but I think Jackson Smith-Njigba is that guy that, I'm going to compare him to someone that he shouldn't be compared to, but it'll make sense. In a way that Travis Kelce is to Patrick Mahomes, I think Smith-Njigba could be that for a quarterback in the NFL. And just in the sense of he is so good in the middle of the field. He is so smart at dissecting zone coverage. It's just really hard to defend him. He's always open. He's always open for a reason. The dude does not make contested catches because he's never in a contested situation. And for Jordan Love to have someone young like that he can grow with Christian Watson, to get on the same page with and be able to kind of develop that relationship with, that excites me. I think that would really add a lot to this offense, especially when you talk about nice tweet. I think when you talk about this offense, you talk about Christian being able to take the top off. That is what I think you need, is someone underneath that can work the middle of the field. Oddly enough, the guy that reminds me of Travis Kelce in this draft class is Quentin Johnston with the ball in his hands, and the way he is so savvy when he has the ball. Like you see him catch the ball and he always turns to the right side, the correct side. He's like he has eyes in the back of his head. He knows where the defender is. And you see Kelsey do it all the time. Quentin Johnston plays that way as well. So that's interesting. And, I think Johnston is a guy that you talk about being able to take the ball from the 20 to the end zone. He is probably the best at that in this class. He is an absolute animal with the ball in his hands. If they take him, I would get that. And it would just be like, hey, we'll figure out the route running. We'll figure out, can he beat man, all that stuff later. Because we just are really excited. A guy that we have not even mentioned yet, and talking about small receivers and talking about could they be in on Jalen Hyatt. If they're in on Jalen Hyatt, why the hell are they not in on Zay Flowers at that
There
spot?
you go, Labo. Shut up.
Because Zay is filthy. He is nasty. And
well, tell the world what you told me. NFL world's not as high on Quentin Johnston, but who are they high on?
Zay. There is a very good chance that Zay is the first receiver off the board in this year's draft class. I think you can go get him at like plus 600. I think you can get him at like plus 600 right now at some gambling institution websites. And I am not a gambler, but if I were, I would go take that at that plus 600 bet, because I've just heard from more than a few people that the NFL loves that kid. And a lot of people, it seems weird because a lot of people are throwing around the Tyler Lockett comps for this year's draft class. There's like 3 guys because they're all small. But I think the one that actually fits is Flowers. I think he plays a very similar brand. But I think Flowers is actually a better yak guy coming out than Lockett was out of K-State. So if they're going to be in on Jalen Hyatt, then I don't understand why they wouldn't be in on Zay. Now, granted, Zay is like 3 inches shorter, but he's thicker. He's in that 180 range. So I wouldn't be upset with that at all. But those are just first round type guys. Like let's get into some of the middle round guys, because we all know, Jacob,
middle round receivers are not good. First round receivers are the only ones worth a damn. Only ones.
But we're going to talk about all these guys, first round picks. First round is going to come and go, and we're going to be sitting there with Lucas Van Ness and Darnell Wright.
Okay, let me be very clear. If that is the way the first round goes, I'm not wearing pants. Like,
I'm fine with that. I mean, those are 2 really good football players that play premium positions. So I am not mad about that at all, but they're just not as much fun to talk about.
No, I understand that. Like players that score touchdowns, I certainly understand that. But I am.
Dude, I don't know. You know how we said Zach Tom is a Packer all last year? Zach Tom is a Packer. Zach Tom is a Packer. Guess what? He was a Packer. He still is. Rashee Rice.
He's the Packers starting center.
Yeah, he's going to be starting somewhere. But is it Rashi or Rashee
Rice? I have Rashee Rice, but I will confirm that while you could, because that's the guy I was going to bring up. Is like, you want to talk about the Green Bay Packerist that ever Green Bay Packered.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. I mean, productive, big, more athletic.
Let me pause here real quick too. Labo, if you are going to disrespect Lucas Van Ness in my studio, I will ban you. So let me just throw that out.
Is that a diss? I don't know if that's a good thing.
He doesn't like him. He's had a lot of sass to say about Van Ness the last couple of days because he had 17 bench press reps and stuff like that. He's a player, man. Player.
He's good. I like Van Ness.
What was I looking at? Rashee Rice. Okay, go ahead. This is great, right?
But yeah, no, a productive player. Guy tested really well. And with Jordan Love as your quarterback, and maybe he's more willing to throw to guys that are not 3 yards open all the time. Like one Aaron Charles Rodgers, wants you to be wide ass open for you to hit for the most part. A guy like Rice, who is he's a contested ball winner. I think he has more juice than he's given credit for. I felt a little bit vindicated when he came out and tested really well. Because I thought you could see that in spurts on tape. Like, I will admit, people, if you want to say, hey, he does not always play that way, sure, I get that. But he also played with a broken toe last year, which has to be painful. So it's I was about to make a COVID toe joke, but
there's an Aaron Rodgers joke in here somewhere.
Yeah, it's somewhere in there. But yeah, so I think if there's one person in this draft, like when we do the Packers draft this year, I think Rice will be a high pick. And he probably should be. Another guy is A.T. Perry out of Wake. I think he is a Packer all day long, twice on Sundays. Like, he is a productive guy that hits all their thresholds. That guy is big time. Don Travion Wicks is another guy. He did not run super well, but he still showed that he's a good athlete. He's more like in that James Jones type of mold, like a 4.6 type athlete that moves well, that when you watch him play, you're just like, oh, yeah, he doesn't have the top end speed, but he's a very good athlete. He's very explosive. That is him to a T. A guy that's interesting to me in the later rounds too, that hit all their athletic thresholds, is the Princeton kid, Andre Yosevas, I think his name is. He did not have a good week I will say he did not have a good week at the Senior Bowl. And he looked like a kid that played at Princeton that immediately was thrown into the top talent in the FBS. And that happens sometimes. But he's a kid that I think is really interesting. Cedric Tillman, another kid that I think the Packers could very well like. Xavier Hutchinson is someone that people pointed out to me. I don't know. He didn't test very well. He tested very he above average, but not great. Here's one that I don't talk about enough, especially for how high I am on this kid, Trey Palmer out of Nebraska. He is someone that is smaller on their threshold type list type deal or whatever. He is he's like 5'11", 190, and 190 is light for the Packers, but he is a slot type guy. Ran a 4.3, and you see it on tape. He is fast. He's explosive with the ball in his hands. He is a threat to score anytime he touches the ball. Some other names I see people throwing out. I like Jonathan Mingo. Jonathan Mingo is like a sawed-off Allen Lazard with the way he plays. He kind of plays in that slot role at Ole Miss. I don't think he can play on the outside. I don't think he tested really well, but I don't think he plays that like that. But he is good. Puka, not a fan of Puka. Not a Puka guy. Parker Washington is like good Amari. No comment on that.
Exist?
Right. Parker Washington, good Amari. Yeah,
good Amari exists. I never saw that. So, like, what does that look like?
Raheem Jarrett was a name just thrown out. I didn't like Raheem that much. I think the Arkansas kids are interesting. I really like the Hazelwood kid. He was a 5-star coming out of high school, played at Oklahoma, and then transferred to Arkansas. Didn't test super well, didn't run super well, but his agilities and jumps I think were good. But then his teammate, what was his name? Matt Landers. He's fun too, and he could be a Packer type. All that stuff, late rounds. But I mean, this year's class at wide receiver too, Jacob, is not like the best. It's fine. It's not terrible. Like, people will be like, "Oh, this class sucks." It doesn't suck, but it's just not. It's not as
the
good
last
as
couple years. Like
3 or 4 years.
Oh my gosh, I'm trying to think. Like, wide receiver 1 in this class, if it's Hyatt or Johnson, whomever. Where do they land in some of these recent classes? It's probably a decent way down the list. To answer the questions,
where would Christian Watson go in this year's class?
Oh, that's a good question too. I'm sure he would fall a little just because of the small school stigma.
Right.
But
I think he'd be right in there, that conversation with like Hyatt and Johnston. When it's all said and done, like, teams would like what he has. But I don't know. We'll
certainly
never
possible. I'm going to go the Big Ten route on a couple different things here. Somebody asked, so of course I'm going to brag about Ronnie Bell a little bit. Ronnie Bell, when it comes to
local kid, he's from Kansas. He's right up the street.
That I didn't know, but I was going to say not local to me, but that's okay. I like Ronnie Bell. I think that he is from an intangible standpoint, everything you want in a player. He's one of those guys that I think is going to have to grind a little bit when he gets to the NFL. He might be one of them dudes that turns out to be like good at everything, but not great at anything kind of thing. His hands can be a little suspect at times. I felt like he dropped a few more passes than he should have, but he also made like his touchdown, his only catch of his 5th year. I think he's a 5th or 6th year senior this past year. But before he tore his ACL, he literally made like a one-handed catch like so. I know that's like really hard to gather there, but I think he deserves everything he gets and more. Got a lot of love for for Ronnie Bell. The other name that was mentioned was Jaden Reed. He plays for the other school in Michigan, the inferior one that wears green. Shout out to Jared Masuga for that one. But I think Jaden Reed's a nice player too. Another guy that you could probably grab late day 2, early day 3 kind of thing. Maybe even the middle of day 3. You mentioned some of those guys like Trey Palmer was a guy that everybody was like, oh, that's a popular day 3 pick for the Packers. Like, I think he tested well enough to where like he'll be a late day 2 guy. You mentioned Cedric Tillman. That's a guy. You basically talked about everybody, so I don't feel like I even have to.
What about
to stuff, but
how do you feel about Tank Dell?
He's tiny. Like, I haven't
How do you feel about Tyler Scott? He's a popular name.
He's popular enough. I have to watch more of him, to be completely frank on that. But yeah, some of those guys that like Dell. Here's the other thing.
Ooh. What about Josh Downs? We didn't talk about Josh Downs.
He's another guy who's small. Like, I like him enough, but that's another one of those. I don't do the whole like Green Bay will never pick him thing. But like, if it's unlikely, then I watch fewer games of theirs than I do someone else's. It's like, why am I going to waste this much time talking about or watching a player that's just like, probably not going to happen. You know what I mean? Like, I love Jack Campbell, for example, but I'm not watching a ton of linebacker tape this year because it just feels really unlikely that the Packers would pick one. But who knows? I guess they've done some things like that before. But Morley, you said you don't think they're done. Jackson Smith-Njigba, I think, has right now what is quote of the combine. And that is when he said, yeah, the Packers, they're definitely looking for a receiver. That doesn't mean him. That doesn't mean, a guy early. It could mean anything. Like I said, I'm not going to be stunned at all if we sit here in, 6 weeks time, longer than that, but however long, 8-9 weeks or anything like that. And just being, well, it won't be 8 weeks, but whatever, however long it is between now and draft day, it's 50 days. So that's 7 weeks. There you go. End of day. I'm not going to be surprised if we sit here and go like, oh, they had pick 13 and 15 and they took a pass rusher and an offensive lineman with those 2 picks. And then pick 45 was Rashee Rice, or that was their receiver, whatever it is that they do. I will not be surprised at all if that is the route they go. Just because that is what they've done in the past. That being said, there are some whispers that they're looking to do kind of what the fans have been asking for where they load up on the offensive side of the ball and the score 100 agenda. I mean, even to the point where like they could take a tight end at pick 15. That's certainly a possibility. I think that's possible. And I got a great question from True North Packers to finish it off. Needs a guidebook of all these receivers. Where could you purchase one? Follow that link right below me here, right there. It says buy the draft guide for $8.99. It is a pre-order, and you can pre-order up until early April. The book drops in April as well, so you're going to want all of that. And we're going to talk about a bunch of stuff next week. Next week, we're talking tight ends. The Packers also might have a new quarterback, and they might have some new players. Our next show actually starts at the same day as the new league year. So that'll be a lot of fun. Appreciate you guys stopping by talking tonight. You can follow me on Twitter. I'm at Jacob Westendorf. You can follow Morley. He's at Jacob Morley. Stay tuned. There's plenty of stuff. I'm going to take one more scroll and see if anything has happened.
Breaking news.
Nothing. Absolutely nothing.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah, there's not a whole lot going on right now in terms of that. Just people arguing about what Aaron Rodgers is worth on the open market, or not the open market, but the trade market. There was somebody quoted it, but I can't see anything that says actually Demovsky on it. But that the Packers would be interested in trading Darnell Savage in an Aaron Rodgers trade. To me, I don't personally see the purpose in that. Like, to save a cup, like, I guess the purpose could be if you really need that $8 million, it basically makes Rodgers' dead cap versus regular cap $8 million. But I don't have much purpose there. But no news to break. We were really hoping, I swear to God, if I hang up, we will jump right back on if news for this trade breaks here in the next couple of minutes. But until then, next week's tight ends, next week's new players, next week's a lot of stuff. It should be a lot of fun. Appreciate you guys listening. We'll see you next week.